What if I told you that the very pain you've been trying to escape is the secret to unlocking your greatest power? Think about it. Every heartbreak, every failure, every sleepless night, what if it was never meant to break you, but to build you? There's one tiny mental shift that can turn your pain into unstoppable purpose. And once you see it, you'll never look at your struggles the same way again. Stay with me, because this could change how you see everything. We'll explain everything in this video step by step. Don't skip it. You know what's wild? The very thing you've been running from, your pain, your heartbreak, your disappointment, that might just be the fuel you've been praying for. Most people spend their lives trying to numb it, bury it, or pretend it doesn't exist. But the truth is, your pain isn't here to destroy you. It's here to wake you up. There's a moment in everyone's life when the weight gets too heavy, when something breaks, when life punches you in the gut so hard you forget how to breathe. You start asking, why me? Why now? What did I do to deserve this? And that's the moment where everything can change if you make one tiny mental shift. Here it is. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how is this happening for me? That's it. That's the shift. Because when you believe life is happening for you, not to you, your entire world transforms. Every scar becomes a story. Every failure becomes feedback. Every heartbreak becomes a classroom where you learn your deepest strength. The pain you carry, that's proof you cared, proof you tried, proof you were alive enough to love, dream, and take risks. And if you're still here, breathing, standing, listening, then life hasn't given up on you yet. So don't you dare give up on yourself. Listen, I've seen people who've lost everything, their jobs, their families, their confidence, rise again, stronger than ever. Not because the pain disappeared, but because they decided it would mean something. They turned their pain into power, their struggle into service, their wounds into wisdom. You want unstoppable purpose? Stop waiting for life to get easier. Demand more from your struggle. Let it shape you. Let it sharpen you. Let it show you what you're capable of. Because when you learn to use your pain, instead of being used by it, you become unstoppable. You walk differently. You speak with conviction. You stop being a victim of your story and start being the author of it. That's the shift. That's the difference between people who just survive and people who rise, lead, and change the world. So the next time you feel that sting, the next time life knocks you down, I want you to smile and say, all right, I see you. I know what you're here for. Let's go to work. Turn your pain into purpose. Turn your purpose into action, and turn your action into a life that inspires others to rise too. Because your story isn't over. It's just getting started. We all face moments when life hits us harder than we ever imagined. The relationship ends. The business collapses. The betrayal comes from the person you trusted most. And suddenly, everything you thought was solid crumbles right beneath your feet. In that instant, your mind starts racing with one question: why is this happening to me? It's a natural question. It's human. It comes from a place of pain, confusion, and helplessness. But here's the truth. While that question feels comforting in the moment, it keeps you trapped in a loop of suffering. It focuses your mind on the injustice, the loss, the wound. It keeps you powerless, waiting for someone or something outside of you to make sense of your pain. The real shift happens when you flip that question on its head and ask a different one. How is this happening for me? That single word change, 2 into 4, transforms your entire state of being. It moves you from victim to creator, from powerless to purposeful. When you ask, why me? Your brain searches for blame. It looks for enemies, for reasons to justify your suffering. But when you ask, how is this for me? Your brain starts looking for lessons, for opportunities, for strength you didn't know you had. The quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So imagine what happens when you shift from asking a question that weakens you to one that empowers you. Suddenly, the breakup that shattered your heart becomes the mirror that shows you where you were settling for less than you deserved. The business failure that left you broke becomes the classroom that taught you how to lead with resilience and clarity. The betrayal that burned you becomes the fire that forged your boundaries and self-respect. Nothing about your external circumstances may have changed, but everything inside you has shifted. Most people never learn this because they're too attached to the idea of fairness. They think life should play by their rules. That pain is a punishment. That struggle means something's wrong. But the truth is, life doesn't owe us comfort. It offers us growth. Pain is not life's cruelty. It's life's curriculum. Every experience is designed to evolve you, to strengthen the parts of you that comfort never could. And the only way to receive that lesson is to change the question. When you start asking how life might be working for you, you begin to see the patterns that were invisible before. You start connecting the dots. You start noticing how every heartbreak, every delay, every disappointment was shaping your character, preparing you for something greater. It's not about pretending that pain doesn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let the hurt define you. It's about realizing that meaning is a choice. The same event that breaks one person can build another. The difference isn't what happened. It's what they decided it meant. When you ask, why me? You hand your power to the pain. When you ask, how is this for me? You take it back. You turn pain into perspective and perspective into progress. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as a student of experience. That shift alone can change your entire destiny. Think about the people you admire most. The ones who lead, who inspire, who seem unshakable no matter what life throws their way. They're not immune to pain. They've just learned to interpret it differently. They've trained their minds to search for the meaning, the gift, the lesson hidden inside the chaos. When they lose, they learn. When they fall, they rise stronger. When they're rejected, they redirect. And that mindset didn't come from comfort. It came from repeatedly asking empowering questions in moments of darkness. Because pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering is what happens when you stay stuck in, why me? Growth is what happens when you shift to, how is this for me? This tiny mental shift changes how you respond to everything. Suddenly, setbacks become setups. Challenges become chances. Fear becomes feedback. You start to live with a sense of curiosity instead of defeat. Instead of saying, I can't believe this happened, you begin to ask, what is this trying to teach me? Or what strength is being developed in me right now? That curiosity unlocks the door to emotional freedom. It gives you a sense of control, not because you can control the world, but because you can control your interpretation of it. You start to realize that life doesn't break you, it reveals you. It shows you the parts of yourself you didn't know were there. The courage, the grit, the compassion, the patience. Every storm you've survived has been preparing you for the next chapter of your story. But you can't see that when you're trapped in victimhood. You can't see it when you're still blaming life for being unfair. You have to be willing to step back and see the bigger picture. You have to trust that there's a design behind the discomfort. You have to believe, even when it's hard, that there's something in this for you. That maybe this pain isn't here to punish you. It's here to position you. It's here to refine your focus, to strip away what's not serving you, to force you to evolve into the person you were meant to become. Because sometimes the only way life can move you to your next level is by shaking you loose from what's keeping you small. The shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness. It takes repetition. It takes catching yourself in the middle of a breakdown and daring to ask the right question. It takes courage to look at your pain with curiosity instead of judgment. It takes emotional maturity to say, I don't understand this yet, but I trust that someday I will. That's the mindset of a warrior, not a worrier. And once you start living that way, once you start training your mind to look for the gift instead of the grievance, your entire experience of life transforms. You stop reacting to pain and start responding with purpose. You stop being controlled by what happens to you and start being guided by what happens for you. This tiny shift in perspective doesn't just change how you think. It changes how you feel how you act, how you live. It brings gratitude into places where resentment used to live. It brings strength into spaces where fear used to dominate. It gives you a kind of peace that isn't dependent on circumstances. And it all begins with one question, one shift, and one decision to believe that life is not against you. It's for you. Pain is the most powerful energy on the planet. It's raw, it's real, and it demands to be felt. Yet most people spend their entire lives trying to escape it. They distract themselves with noise, drown it with comfort, or bury it deep enough that they hope it disappears. But pain doesn't vanish just because you ignore it. It transforms. It hides beneath the surface and shows up in other ways: anger, fear, anxiety, self-doubt, procrastination. Pain that is suppressed becomes poison. Pain that is expressed becomes power. The key is not to run from it, but to learn how to use it, to take that emotion, that fire, that storm inside of you, and turn it into fuel that moves you forward instead of holding you back. Every single person who's ever created something meaningful, whether it's art, a movement, a breakthrough, or a legacy, did it because they hurt. The hunger to create, to build, to grow often comes from a wound. That wound becomes the spark that lights the fire. But most people never realize that their pain is potential energy. They see it as a curse when in reality, it's a hidden source of strength. When you feel pain, it's your soul trying to get your attention. It's saying, there's something here. Don't waste this. Pain forces you to look within, to confront truths you've been avoiding, and to grow beyond your comfort zone. When you harness that energy with intention, it becomes your drive, your purpose, your unstoppable force. The people who rise out of rock bottom are not the ones who never felt broken. They're the ones who learned to extract power from the pain. They stopped seeing pain as an enemy and started treating it like a messenger. The message is always the same: change, grow, evolve. Pain is the teacher that pushes you when nothing else can. It shows you your limits so you can break them. It strips away illusions, excuses, and self-pity until you're left face to face with your truth. And in that truth, you find strength, you find clarity, you find purpose. When you start to use pain as fuel, your entire relationship with discomfort changes. Instead of running from hard things, you start to lean in. You begin to see challenge as an opportunity to access deeper levels of potential. You realize that growth and comfort can't exist together. You can't build strength in an environment that never tests you. You can't build resilience without resistance. Pain becomes the resistance that shapes you like fire shapes metal. You can either let it melt you or you can let it forge you. Think about the times in your life when you've grown the most. It probably wasn't when everything was easy and predictable. It was when things fell apart, when you were uncertain, when you were pushed beyond what you thought you could handle. Maybe it was a loss that shattered your world. Maybe it was failure that embarrassed you. Maybe it was rejection that cut deep. But those moments, as painful as they were, built you. They forced you to dig deeper, to discover strength you didn't know existed. That's the paradox of pain. It hurts, but it heals in the process. It destroys your comfort, but gives birth to your courage. The shift happens when you stop seeing pain as punishment and start seeing it as power. When you realize that every tear, every heartbreak, every disappointment carries energy. Energy is never destroyed, it just changes form. You can choose to let that energy sit heavy inside you, turning into bitterness and resentment, or you can channel it into something greater. Some people use pain to hurt others. The great ones use it to help others. They take that darkness and turn it into light. They build, they create, they serve, they love harder because they know what it feels like to break. There's a reason why the people with the deepest compassion are often the ones who've been through the most. Their empathy wasn't born in comfort, it was born in pain. They understand what struggle feels like, so they dedicate their lives to making sure others don't have to face it alone. That's how pain turns into purpose. It gives you a mission. It gives you direction. It gives you the kind of passion that can't be taught, only earned through experience. The moment you stop asking, how do I get rid of this pain? And start asking, how can I use this pain? you step into your power. When you use pain as fuel, you begin to move differently. You stop wasting time waiting for perfect conditions. You stop doubting your worth. You stop playing small because you've been through worse. You've survived the things that once threatened to destroy you. That realization becomes your foundation. You start to understand that if pain couldn't break you, nothing can. The fire inside you becomes greater than the fire around you. You become unstoppable not because life stopped hurting, but because you stopped letting the hurt control you. The mind is powerful, but emotion is even more powerful. Emotion drives action. Pain is one of the strongest emotions a human can feel, which means it carries massive potential energy. You can use that emotion to spiral into destruction or to fuel transformation. The difference lies in how you interpret it. You can say, this pain proves I'm weak, or you can say, this pain proves I'm still fighting. One interpretation drains you, the other empowers you. Pain can either be the reason you give up or the reason you rise higher than ever before. When you're in pain, it's easy to believe that you're alone, that no one could possibly understand what you're feeling. But that isolation is an illusion. Everyone you admire has walked through darkness. The strongest people are the ones who learned how to build something beautiful out of their brokenness. They took their pain and used it as the foundation for their strength. They didn't wait to feel ready. They used the emotion they had, raw, real, and unfiltered, to take action. Every time you feel pain, you have a choice. You can suppress it and let it harden your heart, or you can embrace it and let it expand your soul. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. The difference isn't in the pain itself, it's in the meaning you attach to it. Pain becomes purpose when you decide that your suffering won't be wasted. When you decide that if you had to go through it, and at least it will count for something, you turn it into art, into love, into leadership, into change. That's how revolutions are born. That's how movements start. That's how ordinary people become extraordinary. So when pain visits you, and it will, don't push it away. Sit with it. Listen to it. Ask what it's trying to show you. Let it teach you discipline. Let it teach you humility. Let it teach you empathy. Let it strip away the parts of you that no longer serve the person you're becoming. Because beneath the pain lies your power, waiting to be unleashed. Beneath the wound lies wisdom, waiting to be heard. Beneath the suffering lies your story, waiting to be shared. When you learn to use your pain as fuel, you stop fearing it. You begin to welcome it as the catalyst for your next level. It becomes the energy that drives your vision, the motivation that pulls you forward when willpower fades. You realize that pain is not your enemy. It's your invitation to evolve. It's the signal that something greater is trying to emerge through you. It's the reminder that even in your darkest moments, you're being prepared for something brighter than you can imagine. Every human being carries a story, and most people are living inside one they didn't consciously choose. They inherit beliefs from their past, absorb opinions from others, and let painful experiences define who they are. Somewhere along the way, they start to believe that their story is set in stone, that their past has already written the ending. But that's not true. Your story is not what happened to you, it's what you decide it means. You can't always control the events of your life, but you always control the interpretation. And that interpretation determines the direction of your future. When you redefine your story, you redefine your identity. And when you redefine your identity, you redefine your destiny. And there are moments in life that leave marks, failures, betrayals, losses, disappointments. And the mind, in its attempt to protect you, builds narratives around those events. It says, I failed once, so I'm not capable. It says, they left me, so I must not be enough. It says, I was hurt, so I can't trust again. These stories feel like facts because they're rooted in emotion, but they're really just interpretations, versions of the truth shaped by fear and pain. The moment you recognize that, you gain power over them. Because if a story can be created, it can also be rewritten. The past doesn't change, but its meaning can. And when you change the meaning, you change the impact it has on your life. The problem is most people don't challenge the stories they tell themselves. They repeat them so often that they become their identity. They say, I'm just not confident. I always attract the wrong people. Nothing ever works out for me. Those are not truths. They're scripts. Scripts that were written in moments of pain and then rehearsed through years of repetition. And the more you repeat a story, the more real it becomes. The brain doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality. It believes whatever you consistently tell it. So if you tell it you're broken, it will find evidence to prove that. If you tell it you're resilient, it will find evidence for that too. That's why redefining your story isn't about denying your past. It's about reclaiming the pen. Rewriting your story begins with awareness. You have to be willing to question the narratives you've accepted. Ask yourself, what story have I been telling about this pain? Maybe you've been telling yourself that your childhood trauma ruined you. Maybe you've been telling yourself that failure means you're not worthy of success. Maybe you've been carrying the belief that love always leads to hurt. But what if none of that was true? What if those events didn't destroy you, but revealed you? What if every moment of pain was preparing you for something greater? The mind loves certainty, even when that certainty keeps you small. It prefers a painful story it understands to a powerful one it doesn't. That's why you must consciously choose to step out of the old narrative, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because comfort isn't freedom, clarity is. When you redefine your story, you change the focus from what happened to what you learned. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what did this teach me about myself? You start seeing yourself as the hero of your story, not the victim of it. And that one shift changes everything. Heroes are not people who have it easy. They're people who rise in the face of challenge. They don't deny the pain. They transform it into purpose. Every story of transformation begins with struggle. Every breakthrough begins with breakdown. The things that once made you doubt yourself become the very things that give you depth, empathy, and power. The people who told you that you couldn't become the motivation for why you did, there's an incredible power in reframing your past. It allows you to extract wisdom instead of wounds. Think about the moments that once felt unbearable. The heartbreak, the rejection, the failure. Now look at where you are today. You survived it. You grew through it. You learned something that changed how you see the world. That experience built emotional muscle, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. The past can either imprison you or instruct you. The difference lies in whether you hold on to the pain or the lesson. Redefining your story means deciding that your past is not your limitation. It's your library. It holds the lessons, the insights, the resilience that you can draw from again and again. And sometimes people fear rewriting their story because they think it means letting go of justice or pretending the pain didn't matter. But it's not about pretending. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of resentment and regret. When you hold on to a painful story, you keep reliving it in your mind. The body responds as if it's happening again and again. But when you choose to reinterpret it, you stop being anchored to that old emotional state. You liberate yourself. You create space for new experiences, new beliefs, new identities to emerge. And you stop identifying with the wounded version of yourself and start aligning with the empowered one. Redefining your story also means taking responsibility, not blame, but ownership. It means recognizing that you are the only one who can decide how your story continues. The moment you take ownership, you reclaim control. You stop waiting for someone else to apologize, fix you, or validate your pain. You become the author instead of the character reacting to someone else's script. That doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means refusing to let it define your future. It means looking at your pain and saying, this shaped me, but it doesn't limit me. Ownership is the doorway to transformation. Without it, you remain stuck in repetition, reliving the same story through different faces, places, and situations. Your story is your identity, and your identity determines your behavior. If you tell yourself you're a survivor, you'll find strength in adversity. If you tell yourself you're broken, you'll find evidence of defeat. That's why redefining your story is one of the most powerful acts of self-mastery. It's the foundation of confidence, resilience, and growth, because once you change the meaning of your past, nothing and no one can use it against you. It becomes your source of wisdom instead of your source of pain. The stories you tell yourself shape the energy you carry into every room, every relationship, every decision. If your story is rooted in fear, and your energy will reflect that. But if your story is rooted in purpose, everything about you shifts. Your posture, your tone, your choices. People feel that energy. They respond to it. They're drawn to it. That's why the most magnetic individuals aren't the ones with perfect lives. They're the ones who've made peace with their imperfections and used them as fuel. They've turned their scars into symbols of strength. When you begin to rewrite your story, the past doesn't disappear. It becomes integrated. You stop rejecting the parts of yourself that felt unworthy and start embracing them as necessary chapters. The pain, the failures, the mistakes, they all become part of your evolution. You realize that nothing was wasted. Every detour, every heartbreak, every setback served a purpose in shaping who you are now. That's the beauty of redefinition. You take what once made you feel powerless and turn it into the very source of your power. The truth is, you've always had the pen. You've always had the ability to reinterpret what your life means. No one else gets to decide the narrative. You can wake up any day and say, this is where my story changes. You can choose to stop repeating the old version and start writing the one that aligns with who you're becoming. You can choose to turn your past from a prison into a platform, because your story isn't just about you. It's about everyone who will be inspired by how you rose from it. When you change your story, you change your energy. When you change your energy, you change your life. Purpose doesn't come from thinking about it. It comes from acting on it. And most people wait for clarity before they take action. But the truth is, clarity doesn't appear before movement. It appears because of movement. When you take consistent, intentional action toward something meaningful, you discover who you are and what you're capable of. Purpose isn't found in books, speeches, or theories. It's found in motion. It's born from experience, from trying, failing, learning, and trying again. And when you take what you've learned from your pain and channel it into action, you create impact, not just in your own life, but in the lives of others. That's when purpose becomes unstoppable. The reason many people feel stuck is because they're trapped in the world of thoughts. They analyze, overthink, and plan endlessly, waiting for the right time to start. But purpose doesn't wait. It grows only through execution. You can't think your way into a life of meaning. You have to live your way into it. Every time you act on your pain, when you use your lessons to help someone else, when you take a step toward what scares you, when you speak truth instead of staying silent, you turn struggle into significance. Action is the bridge between pain and purpose. Without it, all the wisdom you've gained from your experiences stays dormant. With it, everything transforms. When you begin to act with purpose, you shift from focusing on what you lost to what you can give. Pain often makes people self-focused. They dwell on their own suffering, their own wounds. But purpose reverses that energy. It takes you out of your own head and connects you to something larger than yourself. You begin to ask, how can my story serve others? How can what I went through make someone else's path easier? That question alone has the power to transform despair into drive, because nothing heals faster than helping. When your pain becomes a tool for contribution, it stops being a burden. It becomes a blessing in disguise, a bridge between your struggle and someone else's strength. Purposeful action doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to look like starting a company, writing a book, or creating a movement. It starts small, with the courage to take one step, one conversation, one decision that aligns with your heart. It's smiling at someone who looks broken, because you know what that feels like. It's sharing your story even when your voice shakes. It's showing up for yourself in moments when you want to quit. Each action, no matter how small, builds momentum. And momentum is what turns purpose from an idea into a force of nature. When you act with purpose, you activate your inner strength. You stop letting fear dictate your choices because you're no longer acting for yourself alone. You're acting for a reason bigger than your comfort. Fear loses its grip when your mission becomes clear. The pain you once avoided now fuels your persistence. The doubt that used to paralyze you becomes background noise compared to the fire burning inside you. You stop worrying about what others think because you realize your life isn't about impressing anyone, it's about impacting them. And the people who make the greatest impact are rarely the ones with perfect lives. They're the ones who turn their imperfections into inspiration. Action transforms emotion. The fastest way to shift your state of mind is to do something that aligns with your values. You can't think your way out of despair, but you can act your way out of it. Every time you take action, even imperfectly, you build emotional momentum. You prove to yourself that you're not powerless. You remind yourself that progress is possible. Action builds confidence, and confidence builds clarity. It's a loop that strengthens you every time you move. That's why the most fulfilled people aren't necessarily the happiest. They're the most engaged. They wake up each day knowing that what they do matters. They understand that fulfillment isn't a feeling you chase. It's a result you create through action. When you decide to act on purpose, life starts to open up and opportunities appear where obstacles once stood. You start meeting people who resonate with your mission. You attract experiences that align with your energy. The world begins to respond differently because your energy is different. You're no longer drifting, you're directing. You're no longer reacting, you're creating. You begin to operate from intention instead of impulse, and that changes everything. Purpose gives direction to your energy, focus to your time, and meaning to your struggle. It's the ultimate antidote to despair. But acting with purpose doesn't mean everything becomes easy. In fact, it often gets harder because now you're pursuing something that matters. Challenges will arise. Doubt will creep in. Resistance will test you. But that's exactly how purpose strengthens you. Each challenge is a chance to deepen your conviction. Each failure is feedback that refines your path. Each obstacle is a reminder that your mission is worth fighting for. The more you act with purpose, the more resilient you become because your actions are no longer fueled by ego, they're fueled by meaning. Purpose-driven action also has a ripple effect. When you live with intention, people notice. They see the way you move, the way you speak, the way you handle adversity, and it gives them permission to do the same. Your example becomes a catalyst. You might never know whose life your courage touched, but that doesn't matter. Purpose isn't about recognition. It's about resonance. It's about doing what matters because it matters. The more you give, the more you grow. The more you serve, the more strength you discover within yourself. And in the process, the pain that once felt unbearable becomes the foundation for everything you build. There's also a deep peace that comes from living with purpose. You stop chasing external validation because you're driven by internal alignment. You no longer measure success by outcomes, but by obedience to your calling. You start to trust that even if you don't see the full picture yet, your steps are guided. Every action, every choice, every moment of courage is part of something larger unfolding through you. That's the power of acting with purpose. It gives your life a sense of meaning that no circumstance can take away. The truth is, purpose doesn't need perfection. It needs participation. It's not about waiting until you're healed or ready. It's about using what you have where you are to make a difference now. Your pain doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. It gives you credibility, empathy, and depth. It allows you to connect with others on a level that theory never could. And the moment you take your first step toward living with purpose, you'll feel something shift inside you. The heaviness of your pain begins to lighten, replaced by a sense of direction. The confusion begins to fade, replaced by conviction. You realize that all along, the thing you were running from was the very thing you needed to rise. Acting with purpose doesn't just transform your circumstances. It transforms who you are. It gives you a reason to get up every morning, a reason to keep going when things get hard, a reason to believe that your life is part of something meaningful. You stop existing and start living. You stop waiting and start creating. You stop wondering what your purpose is and start becoming it. Every action you take aligned with that truth deepens your sense of fulfillment. It turns your story of pain into a message of power, your lessons into leadership, and your wounds into wisdom. Because purpose isn't found in words, it's built through action. It's something you live, breathe, embody every single day you choose to turn your pain into something that matters. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe